So on September 22nd, 2006, the conviction was overturned, and I was released. I went back to court November 2nd, 2006, at which point all the charges were dismissed against me on actual innocence grounds, and Stephen Cunningham was subsequently arrested and convicted of the crime.
Wasn't he already in prison, though?
He was already in prison,
Okay.
but they still charged him with the murder that he had did
So he
before.
went back to court?
Yeah, he went back to court. Yeah, he was still in prison, but he went back to court. Yes, wow. And he was sentenced to an additional 20 years.
What was that like for you when you first when they found the DNA and it matched him, and you started going, okay, this is going to be a process of being released back into the free world?
Sure. So I found out that I was going home the day before I went home. So So my attorney came to see me. So they opened my cell. I'll take a second or two because, again, this is a longer podcast. So general rule of thumb, if the guards open your cell, you're supposed to go down and see why they opened your cell, see what's going on, right? So they open my cell, and I stick my head out and look down there, and the guard just yells, "Visit!" And I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. Who else come to see me? So I went down there and had him double check and call the visiting room, confirm, yeah, I have a visit. So then I run back to my cell and get a shirt. I had like a routine. Most prisoners do. We have like a visit shirt, like a shirt we keep really nice just for that, because that's the closest we're going to come to making a public appearance of any kind.
Yeah, want to make a good impression.
Right, exactly. So I'm hurrying up. The visiting room is quite a distance from my cell because I don't want to get caught in the count. If I don't get into the visiting room by like 5 to 11, I'm going to be stuck. They're going to do the count, and I'm not going to be able to get in the visiting room for another 2 hours. So I'm hurrying up. So as I'm hurrying up, I'm buttoning my shirt and I'm thinking to myself, well, who the hell came to see me? So when I get in there, there's this woman, and she's waving to me like this, and I don't recognize her. But I wave back, and I think, well, maybe she's mistaking me for somebody else, or maybe she knows me from the visiting room, like in Elmira. So I asked the guard, who came to see me, and the guard looks at me like I'm nuts, and and she says that person, and she said, well, don't you know who came to see you? And I lied to her and just said, well, yeah, of course, sure I know. I didn't want her to cancel the visit, So I walked over to this woman, and she says to me, she identifies herself as Nina Morrison, who's my attorney at the Innocence Project, and she says, the items have been tested. And so, like, my antennas are already up for anything out of the ordinary because I've already had experiences with out of the ordinary and with disastrous results, like when the wrong information was given to my attorney and everything. You remember the technicality we covered. So I'm on the lookout for anything amiss is what I'm getting at. And when she said the items were tested, that was something that kind of set off those alarms. And I said to her, what do you mean the items have been tested? They're not supposed to have been tested for another month. And she said, well, the district attorney pulled some strings and got the lab to expedite the testing a little bit faster. And, the results match the actual perpetrator. You're going home tomorrow. And I said, no, I'm not. And when she said, you're going home tomorrow. And I said, no, I'm not. And the third time she said, you really are. You're going home tomorrow. And I again said, no, I'm not. So I had this like 3.5 hours of like a mental paralysis. So my mind starts racing. All these thoughts start coming into my head. One thought after another, and one thought has nothing to do with the other, and none of it has anything to do with what she just told me. So she's sitting there like literally holding my hand and articulating all these things that are going through my mind, and she's not responding. She's just listening to all this madness. And periodically she breaks in and says, are you ready to talk about tomorrow? And I'm like, no, let's just get that away from me. No, we're not we're not talking about tomorrow. I'm not going home. Not entertaining that. Don't play with me like that. No. And so I go back to the rants again and this and that. And every now and then the same sequence happens. And finally, towards the end, she says, look, there's only like a half hour left in the visit. We've been here all day. And there's a ton of things to do with the media. I also have to get your sizes for your clothing sizes and everything, so you can get a suit for your appearance in court. And that's what made it real. And then I felt better for about 5 minutes. And then a different thought came in my head. The fear that popped into my head was that something was going to happen between that day and the next. Then, and the district attorney was going to change her mind, and then they were going to do what they always did, which was fight me and win. So that was how I learned that I was going to be released the next day.
Wow. And when you finally got released, what was that like, going back into the real world after 16 years? How the world had, I mean, I'm sure technology had advanced, phones had evolved,
Sure. So I get up to.
Was the iPhone out yet?
It was not. No.
Okay.
So I get up to leave. I'm going to explain all of that to you. Great question. So I get up to leave. The court's finished. I get up to leave, and then kind of like the enormity of the moment hit me, kind of like a ton of bricks, And I sat back down, and my attorneys are talking to me, but I'm kind of hearing them and then not hearing them, and eventually the bailiffs just kind of like clear the whole court out. And so after about 20 minutes, I just kind of felt ready. So I got up, and I put one step in front of the other, walking towards the end of the court, and no one's stopping me. With each step, it kind of like gets more real. And then there was this bailiff who's standing up, and she's trying to be professional, but I could see the water's running, and I looked up and made eye contact with her, and and she says, "Good luck." And I said, "Thank you." So I go outside. I remember the sky was blue. The sun was out. I didn't see a cloud anywhere. Many members of the Innocence Project and also Cardozo Law School, which they've been affiliated with, they're all like clapping because, you survived, you overcame the system, and I go to this press conference, and when it's finally my turn to speak after, Nina and Barry Scheck spoke, my first words were, is this really happening? Like, I couldn't believe that I was still actually there. I thought I was just still in the prison, and it was all just a dream, and I'm going to wake back up and see the cell bars and the prison walls and everything. And I spoke there for 3.5, maybe like 2.5 hours, just doing an off-the-cuff presentation, like everything I'd ever wanted to say in 16 years, but could never get anyone to hear me about, came out. And just when I thought I was wrapping up, a different thought came out. So that was that day, and then from there, the other thing I'll mention about that day, and then I'll like go to the overall, is I went to my aunt's house, because my mother had moved away. So I went to my aunt's house, and we're sitting around this table. I remember sitting around the table, and this other family member that hadn't been able to get to the court came over, and they're all sitting around, and they're having coffee and cookies, and they're talking about what happened. And I just remember feeling out of place. I remember like not being able to relate to them, and so I just went outside to just sit down. Just in Elmira, they would always close the yard when it was dark, and I wanted to be able to just sit outside and stay outside. So I did that. So that was that, and taking a bath for the first time in 16 years was kind of like the highlights. I mean, I'd like to say we had a raucous party that lasted to the crack of dawn, but in reality, I had lost track with everybody.